Fremont County, just briefly, Fremont County, Colorado, back in early 2000, just around the Y2K time. And I didn't know it, but this is the capital, the prison capital of the country. We had, at the time, 12 prisons in one tiny county, the county jail, and then immediately surrounding us, there were 5 more prisons in the immediately adjacent counties. So this is an area saturated with corrections personnel. It's the biggest employer, and people are generationally corrections staff in many cases. And so I started learning about corrections, things I never thought I would learn. And I started being exposed to a lot of corrections issues. And my background is psychotherapy, so I had set up a part-time practice because I thought I came here to semi-retire. So I set up a 3-day-a-week counseling practice in Canyon City, Colorado, in Fremont County. And lo and behold, a lot of my clients were corrections related, staff corrections related, either retirees or exes or current staff. So I started getting my education in corrections. And to cut it short, I saw that there had a huge number of issues, especially around trauma. And I tried to find resources for them, and I couldn't find much. And I started getting that inner prompting that I should do something about it, which I was not interested in at all because I was here to semi-retire. And I knew what it would take to break into a pretty closed system that is not very friendly to outsiders. And so I had no interest in dealing with that. So for 2 years, there was an inner struggle, huge inner struggle, long story. I won't give you the whole story right now. But eventually I got the message, and we got on and set up Desert Waters and correctional outreach as a resource. And our focus has been training materials, the actual therapy piece. I did that for several years. The research about corrections issues, like we did the first study on post-traumatic stress disorder rates in the country, and for different occupations, not just corrections officers, but program support staff, etc., probation and parole, and also some more studies on depression, and a lot about the damage, in a sense, the effects of the job, and develop the materials that we have based on the research that we've done and others have done, and we provided different resources like a hotline, the Correctional Oasis, which is a monthly publication, which I think is a huge blessing to people, with articles on wellness for staff and families. So this has been a lifelong, for me now, pursuit, and it's a love affair. Really, we do this because we love you guys. I didn't have to be doing that. I didn't really want to be doing that. But once we got in, we fell in love with you, and I can't imagine life without doing this. So, Brent, would you like to share about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Brent Parker, and before I moved to Colorado, I grew up in Illinois. So while I don't have an accent, all y'all do. We don't have accents in Illinois, I don't think. So I'm just a farm kid. But I did live in Colorado and worked at the Colorado Department of Corrections for 30 years. And I was one of those thousands of people that Caterina is talking about in that county where all the prisons were. And while I never went to Caterina for counseling directly, I met her at one of her very first trainings.
Yes.
And I was just blown away by what she was offering. In its very first version, her corrections fatigue to fulfillment really hit me right in the heart. And so ever since then, we've been friends, and I tried my darndest to get her program into the Colorado Department of Corrections, and we did, not to the extent I hoped for, but we got it in there, and we offered it to many staff, and it really helped. And then later, after I retired from the prison, I went to work at the local sheriff's office for a couple of years. And then when I got ready to retire, I was blessed with a phone call from Caterina to be one of her trainers. And to me, that was just a no-brainer. So I've been one of her trainers for about 4 years now. So she's been counseling me for about 4 years. That's how it works out. And I am exactly the poster child for what she talks about in all of her training, just like you guys probably are too. You work in this business, it affects you from the inside out. There are things you can't undo and you can't unsee that are going to be with you for the rest of your life. And her training just is so valuable and important to regaining our health and moving forward. And from the very first class I took from her, I was put on by the feds in a church. I mean, there was hardly anybody there, and I just thought, how could we not do this? This is so important, and it changed my life from that moment forward. So I am thrilled to be part of Desert Waters, and when I get to go out and train with Caterina or on her behalf, I just feel like I'm making a difference and happy to be doing it. So like she says, it's kind of a love affair. We don't do this necessarily for the money. We do it because we really want to help people. And it is the best training that I've had, seen, been part of in over 35 years in corrections. So
Wow.
I'm very excited to be part of it and really happy to meet you guys today and talk to you about what the programs really are about. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm semi-retired and I live in Arizona now, but I work for Caterina whenever she needs me.
Thank you. And you are a huge gift and a blessing. So thank you. So so let's just get on with our little show here. A little bit about our mission. It's about increasing the occupational, personal, and family well-being of the corrections workforce. So we want to look at occupational, like work-related, personal, what's going on in somebody's heart and head, and their family issues, their home life, their personal life. And how do we do that? We do it through evidence-informed, research-based resources of different types, solutions that we customize, like we have done research for certain departments or agencies, and providing support of different different types, like booklets, the Correctional Oasis, the hotline we have offered in the past, and now we offer it as an email service, all those ways. So let's start a little bit with talking about the Fatigue to Fulfillment course. That's the one that's been around for a long time. I really started putting it together in year 2001, before we incorporated Desert Waters Correctional Outreach. I was trying, and that's when I coined the phrase that sent the name corrections fatigue, trying to do something that was specific to corrections, was not borrowed from police, was not borrowed from therapists. It was specific to corrections, because what I felt was that the corrections people were so invisible, and everybody was kind of like as an afterthought, tagging them on to a list of like first responders, if they did at all. And I wanted something that we totally focused on corrections and go in depth and really, really try to look at all the nuances and all the shades of gray, so to speak, and all the different aspects of corrections, and not try to fit a police model or a general whatever military model or anything to corrections. So that's been the emphasis. So I started putting that together. We've had umpteen revisions and updates, and based on feedback, new research, whatever. So it's been around a while. And in 2016, the International Association of Corrections Training Personnel blessed me to no end by awarding us the Commercial Product Award of Excellence for what we call CF2F, the Correction Fatigue to Fulfillment course. And that really was a huge joy to me, because when we first came on the scene, as you can imagine, back in 2003, people were not entirely comfortable with the material, because it was a little too in your face, like this is what happens to people, and it was a little, it tends to be in your face, because I think that to build awareness, you have to describe what's happening. So so it was very nice to see that it was recognized as being helpful. So, Brent, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. Are you advancing the slides,
Yeah,
Caterina?
yeah.
Okay. So I just want to pigtail on what Caterina just said about it being in your face. It is a training that is in your face because it forces us to look at ourselves. And it's kind of like the doc telling you that you're not well. You don't want to hear it, but you need to hear it. And it's really, it really comes at you like that in the beginning. And then, of course, you realize it's all about helping you. So, and that's really what our goals are with this program, CF2F, is just an increased understanding of how we got where we are, and who we are after working in corrections, developing some compassion for ourselves and others, which I think we have compassion more for others than we do for ourselves sometimes. And then developing those supportive connections. And then at the same time we're doing those positive things, we're also trying to decrease some of the negative things that are going on, like the shame and the isolation and some of the despair that causes us to have such high rates of depression and suicide and you know, problems at home and all those kind of things. So the goals of CF2F are pretty big.
Yes, yes. And you know what? The amazing thing is that we see that they get met here and there individually or in big groups when departments offer the material to everybody. And I just want to add something about the shame. People feel ashamed because they see that they're operating in ways that they're not proud of, like they're yelling at their kids or they're being really mad all the time, and they're feeling embarrassed. They feel bad, like, what's happening to me, and they don't understand it, so they just get stuck in shame and withdraw even more, or try to self-medicate the shame away, and that does not help. So we have several objectives. We want to describe the nature of correction fatigue and its causes. So again, that's part of the de-shaming, saying this is how you ended up from A to Z. These are the steps in between. This is not about you being weak or messed up. This is about being pummeled repeatedly over years by this force and that force and the other force. And to identify strategies to increase fulfillment individually as a professional in corrections, and to manage stress again individually as a person working in corrections, and then to look at organizational strategies to cultivate what I call a positive organizational climate. Because if enough people are in a pretty dark place, disgruntled, discouraged, demoralized, the whole culture starts reflecting those characteristics of correction fatigue. The whole culture is fatigued. And I've sensed it sometimes. I'll walk into a place, I've walked into a facility, and it's like, whoa, there's a sense of weariness or heaviness. And we want the organizational atmosphere to be healthier, because how can you survive like if you're a fish in a new pond, if the pond waters are toxic, you're not going to do very well in there as a new fish, even if it's like a new hire walking in and being hit with that climate. It's going to drain all their joy and enthusiasm. So we want to look at organizational strategies. It's not just all up to the individual person. It has to be, we'll talk about that later, top down as well as bottom up. Brent?
So, you know, the big question at the beginning of any training is, well, why do we do this? Why should we offer this class? And there's a really good list right there on the screen. It's all about staff well-being and healthier staff, which of course is going to lead to better performance and less injuries, better safety, less liability. And a key piece is less turnover. People will leave our employment if they're not feeling like they're getting fed and being taken care of. And I really think that this class is one of the things that I've seen in my career that can reduce turnover, which we all face everywhere across the country, high turnover. So it does help fulfill that mission that we have at our agencies. And I think it shows that the agency cares. And 35 years ago, when I started in corrections, in my generation, whether or not the boss cared wasn't that big of a deal, I don't think. But I think nowadays it is. People want to know that they're valued at their work and that their workplace takes care of them. And that's one of the things this class, this type of training does for staff. I should have mentioned earlier too that I did start as an officer at the Department of Corrections, and I finished my career as an administrator and moved up through the ranks. I had 16 different jobs at the Department of Corrections, so I've seen these pieces and parts from a lot of different angles. And when we teach the class, it's always interesting to see how different people view different things based on where they're at in their career, and where they're at in their positions. So Caterina's done a great job making these programs appeal to everybody at every level, because we're all affected. There's no getting out of it. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we have several course sections. The CF2F course is pretty packed. It's a fast-paced, all day long course, and it's divided in two big portions: the fatigue and the fulfillment. And we talk about what the nature of fatigue is, the correction fatigue, and then the occupational challenges that contribute to it, and phases of professional change, like where people are at. And we talk about cycles that people go through. And it's really funny. People really connect to that. And they say, last year I was here, this year I'm here, this is where I want to be going. We talk about the continuum of signs. We talk about the fact that, by the way, that correction fatigue is not a disease. It's like a metaphorical term that captures all the effects and outcomes of being impacted negatively and not having good strategies to cope and being overwhelmed. We talk about suicide in the ranks, especially about correctional officer suicide, because that's where we have the most data, even though we have gathered data from like suicidal thinking from all professions in corrections. The correction fatigue process model describes graphically what happens, and you can see that on our website under research, by the way, desertwaters.com. And the silent witness exercise is that some people say it was worth the entire class, where people see anonymously where everybody else is or has been, and that is a way to break down walls, because people realize that, oh, I'm not the only one, or like, oh my gosh, I forgot to put that down. I have those issues too. And it really makes people feel part of and not like an oddity or a weak person. To some people, it's totally a foreign concept, and they have a hard time with that side of that section of the training, because they haven't encountered certain things yet. They haven't tasted them. It's like somebody describing to you a fruit that you've never even seen, let alone taste before. So we talk about what that is individually. The big seven, it's about 7 key needs that we have to feel satisfied that and sane and healthy. And we talk about the basics of self-care. I call them the ABCs of self-care. The basics of a healthy identity, worldview, and spirituality, which get messed up on the fatigue side. It's like, okay, what does the healthy one look like and how do you get there? About positive leadership, the whole thing about positive organizational climate that involves everything from certain policies to optimism to different things, including even forgiveness. We talk about forgiveness in this course because a lot of people are holding grudges for the last 20 years, and it totally poisons their interactions with other staff. And then we close with a professional vision exercise about where they want to be going in the future professionally and what parts of them they want to grow professionally. So these are key sections. They're not the only sections. And in between are some questionnaires, a small group activity, and a little checklist kind of thing, just to personalize the whole thing. Because remember, my background is therapy. It has to be applied to self. If it's just intellectual head knowledge, it's going to be a waste of time. We want people to have the light bulb come on, like, whoa, that's me. My wife was right. And I've had people during the T4T, the instructor training, call home and apologize, or, seriously, or make amends with coworkers because they see their part in it. And in a non-judgmental, non-blaming way, we are kind of saying this is how it happens. And then you have broken relationships and misery. And so that's a summary.
Can I just interject while you still have that up
Yes.
on the slide? So when you guys are looking at all of those, that list of topics, it's kind of hard to imagine, but each one of those topics brings on lengthy discussions in the class. And that's where a lot of the real learning occurs. It's the discussion that goes on around these topics. So as a longtime trainer, I was really thrilled to see how Caterina sets up these classes, because they're not just lecture at all. They're very engaging and interactive, and there's great activities to keep people involved. And then a lot of the learning occurs through the discussion and the self-discovery that goes on while they're looking at themselves and their partners and where they've been in their career. So as you look at that list, you just have to imagine each one of those topics plus others are going to be classroom discussions that bring on all kinds of feelings and emotions and stories and venting, and sometimes it's pretty intense. But it's all about making us stronger and healthier, and the results are right before your eyes. I mean, we have been in the class and actually seen people, just the light bulb going on and the healing begin right there in the classroom. And it is very exciting. It is very exciting.
Yep. Makes it all worth it. So there you go. So
here are some expected outcomes. Obviously, we want to try to create a more positive employee. In corrections, we can sink into that pessimistic negativity pretty quick, but we're trying to come back to being more optimistic and positive, and this class really does help with that. Also, a dynamic that happens, which I'm fearful we'll lose with the online training that really happens in the classroom, is that sense of community, that camaraderie. Even for people who have worked together for a long time, they often don't even know each other that well. But you get them in this kind of class where some of the tough, rough exterior gets kind of stripped away. The guard goes down a little bit. You really start to know each other, and the sense of community really builds through the class. Even a one-day class, it's amazing how much community you can build in an 8-hour day. And then the communication opens up, and hopefully some of the stigma around using your employee assistance program or peer support and all those kind of things that just seems to be present in every agency we visit, some of that stigma goes away, and people will get the help that they desperately need, because they don't have to worry about what's everybody think, and is this going to make me look weak, and those kind of things. So there's a very there are some very positive outcomes from CF2F.
Yeah, and I want to say that a warden shared with me, and she actually wrote me an article, we printed in the Correctional Oasis way back, that she did see more conversations among staff, more civil discussions, and maybe problem solving together, and she saw an increased use of EAP services. They did not have peer support at that department, but she said that definitely people were using EAP before the bottom fell out, which is what we want. And we had a couple of our instructors in another state, big state, a lot of violence in their facilities. And they said that they had, in 1 year, they had 6 staff approach them at the end of the class, often with tears in their eyes, and said, I was planning on killing myself and I'm going to go get help now. Or in another case, it was 6 of them in one complex, two facilities. And the other one, there also had a lot of people who said I was planning on getting divorced, and now I realize not my spouse's issue. I'm the problem here. I need to get fixed in some areas and not just dump my spouse and go for the next one. And we have 2 emphases in this class. One is bottom up, like individually, what can you do? Like become aware of what your needs are, how you operate, blind spots you had about how you come across to people maybe, and be empowered enough to start taking responsibility. Like, what can I do to help here? What can I do to fix something? What can I contribute in my little area, in my sphere of influence? What can I be doing to improve this situation, as opposed to saying they should fix it? They, whoever they is, It's their problem. I'll just sit here and wait till they fix it. Like, no, what can I do? And we talk about just even coming in smiling instead of looking grouchy is a way to start changing the atmosphere around you. And putting back, like, instead of just complaining, what can you do? And instead of just escaping, what can you do to make things better? Like, okay, you have a part in this. It's not all somebody else's, magic wand to take care of everything. And then the next emphasis is.
So while what Caterina was saying is one of the primary goals of CF2F is to get individuals to take responsibility, that's not in any way, shape, or form a way to relieve responsibility from administrations, because we really do talk a lot about what administrators can do to support the efforts of the individuals. And, acknowledging people is one thing, policies and resources are another thing, and then following through. And while offering this class is a great place to begin the process, it's not the end at all. I mean, this is a long-term process. It took a long time for all of us to get in the condition we're in, and we're not going to get fixed overnight. So there needs to be a group effort, and it starts with the individual, but it also starts from the top down. And I think this program really does a good job. We've got specific slides designed for really great discussions with administrators, managers, supervisors, those kind of folks. So taking care of our people, that's what we need to do.
Yeah. So in a way, the organization is like an individual looking at themselves. What can I do? And the two meet somewhere in the middle, as opposed to making it all the other person's problem or the other party's problem, and going nowhere, because people won't get stuck in inertia, so to speak. And we talk about what kind of policies would help, like basic issues like getting enough sleep. It's really hard to be healthy if you are doing so much mandatory overtime. You're living on 4 hours of sleep for months on end. I mean, that's a huge issue, and we realize how tough it is for departments. And at the same time, you cannot have people being like zombies. I mean, the brain has limits. So there are some hard things to look at. And we have for adult institution staff, both custody and non-custody program support staff, probation and parole, the juvenile justice, both facilities, institutions, and community. And then we have a version for new hires that is quite different from the other four. And it's shorter, it's half the length, and it's a lot more spoon feeding. We know at least one department that is using it regularly with their new hires, and people apparently are thanking them for giving them the heads up and helping them to kind of orient themselves and not have just a romantic view of this job, and kind of preparing them and telling them what kind of things they need to put in place. And hopefully they'll remember as time goes on that they need to go back and look at some basics. So we have those customized versions. And if people do the one of the four, they automatically get number 5, which is the new hires, because to me that's critical to be able to prepare people coming in the door and help them have a helmet on and a shield and a breastplate kind of thing, whatever, that they need to have that on, and not just think it's going to be one rah time of doing this job, but it's going to have an impact on them and their families, and they need to prepare for it.
So one of the things I just add to that, the first 4 are built with the idea that people have experience to draw from, mm-hmm. and we build on that throughout the day's training. But the new hire class is really designed for a person that has 0 experience, mm-hmm. but gives them so much insight into what they're really getting into. And then the way the class is put together, they get a lot of what ifs, and they get some information, and then how would you apply that information. So I'm very proud of how that new hire class is put together. I just think it reaches the new hire perfectly. I wish we'd have had something like that 35 years ago, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, and we do it
what you're getting into.
And we have a T4T specifically for the new hires, but really a good instructor who has done the other 4, one of the other 4 versions, should be able to do the new hire version. But we've had also, like I said, we have a special instructor training for it. And we have like 7 scenarios in that class of what could happen at work or home. and what we recommend people not do and what we recommend people do. And yeah.
So here are some quotes that we've heard from staff comments that we've heard, and you can look at the list. It's all very positive. Seriously, the most important training in my career. I'm not sure I'm the one she's quoting there, but I've said that so many times.
No, you're not.
We do a lot of training in corrections. One of my jobs was running the training academy, and we would spend days teaching staff how to communicate and how to ward off inmate games and protect themselves in a fight and do all these things. And one of the places that we did not do well was managing our emotional well-being and our overall health going in. And that's why I think this is just such an important training. And those quotes, they don't even hardly give it justice. I mean, it is life-changing, and it will save lives. All those people out there that are contemplating suicide that don't go through with it because of a little piece of training somewhere along the line or something somebody said in a class, you don't know when that happens, but it happens. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we get wind of it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And there's a lot of healing that flows, and I'm incredibly grateful because that was always my heart's desire. And so we have options and challenges regarding the implementation piece. Like, okay, you do the training for trainers. How does the department implement it then?
Here's some issues that you can, these are some decisions for you guys to think about on your end once you decide to go with the class. Do you want it to be mandatory for all staff, or do you want it to be more of an elective training? There's pros and cons to both of those things. Obviously, mandatory is nice because you can get everybody trained on the same page, but that also might take more trainers and obviously takes a lot more commitment from administration to free people up to go to mandatory training. And we have a lot of things in our business that are already mandatory, so adding one more might not be possible all the time. But and then if people go because it's elective, they're going because they want to. Sometimes there's a good argument that they get more out of it if they went on their own accord. This kind of touches on what Patrick was referring to 3 and 4 there. If you have everybody in the class that's in the similar role, like they're all custody staff, that's great. They'll get good discussion. They all can relate very easily. But there is something to be said for having diverse roles represented in the classroom and having people there from food service and maintenance and nurses and chaplaincy and mental health and various places around the prison setting along with the custody staff, because then you really get those diverse perspectives. And the conversations, in my opinion, the conversations are more beneficial when you have a diverse group in the class. I've done it both ways, and I always enjoy the ones where we have lots of different viewpoints. And then, of course, Caterina touched on this earlier. It could be a 1-day class or a 2-day class. There again, that's totally your call because you know what you can afford to do time-wise and money-wise and all those kind of things. And if there's a union involved, that can play a part in that whole delivery process. We do spend some time in the class with the trainers talking about classroom management, and we usually get some very good discussions there. We like to have some experienced trainers in the room, so this isn't the first class that they teach. So they come to the class with some classroom management skills already. But Caterina and I can both tell you that what you encounter in this class is different than most other classes. I've been a trainer for a long time, taught a lot of different classes. The only thing that really gets close to this class emotionally is PREA and suicide prevention classes, because we know those are tough topics and they can bring about some emotional comments and discussions. That's what you have to be ready for as a trainer in this class, and doesn't always happen, but when it does, you have to be ready. And that's why an experienced trainer is preferred, because they're not so worried about their training skills as they are about managing the learners and their needs. So But we talk about that. We go into detail in the T for T about classroom management. Anything to add there, Caterina?
Yeah, and we have to spend the time, like if somebody has a meltdown, they're angry, they have a huge grudge that they've kept for the last 5 years, and they explode in class. Like, what do you do then? People being disruptive, talking in the back. What you do with that? People who have a meltdown in terms of grief, sadness, and they start weeping. And then if people tell you or anonymously during the silent witness exercise that they're a threat to themselves, they're contemplating suicide, or the threat to others, I'm going to blow somebody away. And as you know, these things have happened, and it's like, okay, how do you handle those, whether you know who they are or you don't? And we're trying to kind of cover the bases there. I always say that I pray that it will never happen, but you have to be prepared to know what to do if it does happen. And because, once in 10 years will be more than plenty. And so we want people to know what to do. They don't just freeze or say, have a nice day, see you tomorrow, and let somebody go. And yet not freak them out either, and make all future classes such that people don't say anything out of fear of being confronted and questioned and interrogated, so to speak. So we talk about, the worst case scenarios, if you want to call it that. And we've had people who did identify themselves, actually. Instructors have told me we had a couple of cases where people put down something about they had been thinking about suicide, and when it was brought up the way we have suggested, they bring it up in a non-shaming, non-critical, non-attacking way. People identified themselves in front of the whole entire class and said, I wrote that, this is what's going on, this is where I'm getting help. And so it was resolved very, very nicely. And we actually had that in the T4T. Also, an instructor, candidate talked about those things. So we want to prepare people so that they don't get blindsided, they don't get stunned by what may happen. And
we recognize too that you guys have policies about threats and those kind of things. So we want to be able to sort of dovetail into whatever your policies require the trainers to do in a given situation. So we talk about those kind of things as well.
Yeah, absolutely, following their policy. In fact, for one big state, we include a page on their policy about threat to others in their manual. So yes, so that's part of what we do. We want to be prepared because we are addressing issues that are very much about those things, about despair and anger, and so we need to expect for people to unload about those things, and because we're talking about them, so no surprise.
We first rolled this class out in Colorado, and we Caterina trained some of our trainers, and I went to the class, and they had Kleenex out on the table, and in corrections, you just don't put Kleenex out on the table just every day, but they did, and there was a darn good reason for them, because by the end of the day, people's emotions were really coming through, and that's part of the learning. That is just a huge part of the healing process. And but that was just a physical manifestation of this class. Is so different than anything we offer across the board, and we're going to touch lives differently.
Okay.
I just want to go back one slide there. I just want to touch base. I don't think we mentioned much about the phone coaching.
Yes.
That follows the T for T, whether it's online or in person. Each new trainer gets 2 hours of phone coaching with one of the master trainers after the week together. And it seems like an odd thing coaching somebody over the phone, but I've been on both sides of that and heard a lot of feedback, and it is a great kind of last review of the lesson plan, answering questions before we turn the trainers loose on the staff. So it's an important piece, but it's a critical part.
Yes, and we have even given at no additional charge a third and even fourth session for some people who needed additional beefing up of maybe comprehension of certain concepts or whatever it might be, ease of delivery. definitely want them to be in a good place, because it's a tough course to teach. It's not a course for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
That's for sure.
Especially, yeah, it's unfamiliar. It's like, whoa, it's not your typical fire instruction training. So firearms, I mean, so crucial issue, something needs to be done with reminders. You cannot just offer one course one time in the Niagara Falls of their events over a career. That would be washed away. They really need to have reminders. And we have one little plan I call the 7x7, which is those big 7 needs, like reminding people once a week, like this is going to be week for A, B, C, whatever, like just reminders. How can you apply it? Share where you've applied it, maybe at roll call if you still have roll call. Something. It's important to remember that none of us learn one time. After one time, we need repetition and reminders, and so.
So
Right?
that 7x7 speaks to the top-down approach that we talked about earlier. So that would be something that administration could roll out, some kind of a process where people are reminded of the principles throughout, a week or over a period of time. Yeah. So it doesn't get lost.
Yeah, and so that's why we created also posters for the CF2F and for True Grit, posters that people can put up just to glance at them as they walk by and say, oh yeah, that concept. Reminders. People need to be reminded, especially when under extreme chronic stress. And so here we go with True Grit.
So we're going to talk about True Grit, which is the follow-up program to CF2F. And while CF2F is sort of divided into 2 sections where you have the fatigue section and then the fulfillment section, True Grit is a full day of fulfillment, as a way to describe it in a nutshell. So we're talking about coping skills and those kind of things. So yeah, another great program. It's kind of like a sequel, but it stands alone as well. You could just do True Grit and get a lot out of it. You wouldn't necessarily have to do CF2F.
Yeah, and people have asked me, why do we need CF2F before? And I'm saying that if you have people that are heavily traumatized and in a dark place, they don't want to hear the rah of effective coping skills. They want to be understood and heard and sat with in the place of despair, pain, bewilderment, whatever it might be. They're not ready to receive good news. They want to be heard first and validated and have an explanation of how they ended up in that dark hole. And then it's like, okay, to stay out of the dark hole, this is more in-depth equipping. And so, yeah, it's about equipping staff further. We need to have them learn more, because the 3 hours of fulfillment during CF2F is the basics, the fundamentals, the foundational concepts. You cannot go in detail. There's not enough time. So it's about giving them a wide array of tools, and then allowing them to have 4 opportunities during the course to practice some things in a small group, and then take things to practice at home. Whoops, I think, Brent, I took your slide.
That's okay.
Okay, go for it.
Slides.
Go for it.
No, you go ahead. This is an even numbered slide.
Okay. And again, we talk about what is resilience. Most people don't even know what the term means and what does it look like, what feeds it, what increases it, and what factors play into it, and according to research. And then what kind of skill-based behaviors can one practice at work, at home, and in the community? Because we're parts of our community, not just work and home. And so we talk about all being skill-based. That's why I like, in the next slide, we'll talk about a cookbook. It's about how-tos, very concrete instructions.
So these are some of the key features of the True Grit program, very much based in research. Caterina is a researcher. Okay, I got to toot her horn because she won't do it herself. She digs in and she finds the research, the most current stuff. Desert Waters does their own research. She is constantly looking for science-based things to add to the program. So this is all based on that. It's not just made up. This is very much steeped in research. We talked about it being able to stand alone, but it does work really well as a sequel to CF2F. This is really more focused on what the individual can do in their area and their sphere of influence. And granted, that changes as people move and change their positions in their work. They may be able to do more or less different things. So we talk about that. And it is a cookbook. And I like that term too. There's not one size fits all answers to these problems. When we talk about corrections fatigue, everybody's a little different. So everybody's answers, solutions, coping skills are going to be a little different. And one of the things that works well in CF2F, but especially in True Grit, is we lay out just numerous different coping skills for the learner to pick from. So what works for me may not work for you, but it's all there for the picking. And what works right now might not work later. I got to try something different. So we put all that information out there. True Grit is very engaging, just like CF2F. There's activities, open discussions. It actually, because we don't have the fatigue part built in, it turns out to be a lot of fun. CF2F is fun too. I got to admit, I've been a trainer a long time. I have fun with these classes. And I find True Grit to be exciting to watch people just pick and choose how they're going to cope with life moving forward.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah. And feeling empowered because they know that there are things they can do now that they hadn't thought of before. That I love that. And the core topics, we have, like, in a sense, 5 core topics. One is about the whole thing of true resilience. We talk about fake resilience to contrast it with true resilience, and characteristics, etc. Like, what is this thing about? And it's in particular psychological resilience. And then we talk about 4 major areas with the skills associated with them. How do you manage yourself, regulate, especially your emotions, but also your thoughts? So it's both cognitive and emotional stuff. Strategic coping, so that you can really help yourself, not just cope and then pay a price later. How to have positive relationships, because we know that good relationships bolster people's endurance. And then mastery, knowing their stuff, being good at what they do so that they can, less mistakes, less stress. So these are the kind of the 5 core areas for True Grit, and then we have some subtopics.
And here again, when you look at these topics, you just have to imagine that in a classroom setting, each one of these topics is going to garner a discussion. It's not just a lecture or a talking point. We really break it down with a lot of Q&A and get their involvement and their stories, and get them to talk about the things that are on the slide there. And I won't go over each one of those bullets, but I can tell you that correcting thinking distortions is always a fun discussion, because we have, I think it's 12 distortions listed, maybe 10 that we go over, and everybody relates, because in corrections, we all start having these thinking distortions. We spend a lot of time talking about managing our anger and our anxiety, and people always have great stories about how they do that. Another nice thing I really like is with CF2F and True Grit, there's a play-along packet, or a workbook, a handbook that each person gets. And it allows them to take notes and follow along and fill in the blanks. And some people learn that way and others don't, but it's there for them to use. And one of the things we have in the True Grit workbook is a gratitude wheel. And it's a great activity to help people really recognize all the things that we have to be thankful for. And we always get good discussion about that. And just to see where people are at in their life, really. It's really powerful. We spend a lot of time talking about relationships in True Grit, repairing and strengthening the relationships we have. I'm sure you guys, I'm preaching to the choir, but we know in corrections, we're not good at relationships sometimes, not at work, not at home. So we talk about how we can improve in those areas. And there again, it's all done in a way that doesn't make people feel put off. It's very positive in its approach. Caterina's done a great job of making it sort of easy on the nerves to go in and talk about these things. And we get great discussions. I love True Grit, and I always look forward to the discussions that we have in these classes. So,
thank you. All right. And then the features that are particular to this course is that we try to make it corrections relevant, so it's not generic to everybody, specific to corrections issues, and have the small group activities, 4 big opportunities for that, and we give them several scenarios to pick from for each one. And we have action plans. We have a couple of action plans that one is a shorter one is a longer one, where again they apply to self, like, okay, what can I take home with me? What can I start practicing here tomorrow? And to make my life better. And we always say, pick one thing. Don't start all over the map. Just pick one thing and start practicing that and see what happens.
So can I just add something to that slide? Yes. If you guys get to accepting and doing this program in your agency and you're picking trainers, if you get to that stage, think about picking some people that are good trainers that are not maybe correction staff, so that when you do have your non-uniform staff in there, they can still keep it corrections related, but relatable to the people that aren't necessarily custody and control, security. So, or pick people that have worked in both areas, or just have a wide knowledge of the agency, so they can make sure everybody's included in the conversation. Because you're not always going to have custody people in the class.
Right. So what are some of the expected outcomes of offering the course True Grit to your staff? Some of those outcomes are increased positivity, where people have a more positive attitude, more hope that things can get better, things can be dealt with in effective ways, effective self-management, where people deal with themselves better, regulate themselves better, more effective problem solving, more effective positive relating with each other, and then a sense of mastery being increased, where people learn and do things with more mastery, so they feel more able to handle situations. People are saying it's excellent, it made a profound impact, it was a great tool, it builds strength, and it builds and strengthens the toolbox about what kind of tools to use to deal with these situations. It builds bonds amongst staff. And one person said that by far it was the best training that they had been through. So they found it to be helpful. And what are some of the training formats? How do we deliver this? One way is the direct delivery, where we come, one of our Desert Waters master instructors comes and offers the 1-day, 8-hour training in person. Another option, a second way to offer this training to your staff, is to have instructors trained to offer it and certified by Desert Waters. And we do that in person by coming to you and offering a 5-day, 40-hour in-person training, with the first day being the actual course delivered in real time. And the additional days are breaking down the material and how to teach it and having teach backs. And then that is followed, and a quiz, and that is followed by 2.5-hour long individual phone coaching sessions to hone skills. And then we can have a dress rehearsal optional, where people teach back longer sections of the material. And of course, when they get certified to train their peers, their colleagues, they're not certified to train other instructors. They're merely certified to deliver the training to their coworkers. And a third option is to do an instructor training online. The third option for how to deliver this material to your staff is having the instructor training conducted online. And it's still a 5-day, 40-hour training, but it's a combination of online training, like half a day, and independent study. And the first day is the actual training in real time, and then it's broken down into sections and delivery issues, etc. And that is followed by 2.5 hour long coaching sessions by phone individually. And that helps with delivery issues, answering questions, and giving them more opportunity to do teach backs. And again, those who are certified to offer True Grit through the remote online training are not certified to train other instructors. They are certified to offer the training to their coworkers. And the crucial issue again is that we need to follow up and reinforce the principles taught in the course through reminders and repetition. Staff cannot fully grasp and remember all those tools after a one-time exposure. They need to be reminded and shown where something is relevant to be applied, and giving an opportunity to practice and ask for feedback about what it was like after they did practice, how that went. So thank you for listening, and we appreciate your interest in True Grit.